What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Hooligans. Make sure you guys rack up those likes, more hooligans. I got my birthday present with me. Oh, you see what it says? Ooh, don't drop the cup of coffee. There you go. All right. My apologies for being late, since everything's been reset and redone and whatever. I had to log into all my accounts. And I don't remember passwords very well, but that's something I'm going to have to get used to unless I want to keep having my identity stolen. So, on the schedule today, well, hold on a second. Let me check on these chats, make sure everything's running on this new system. Daniels is being really vocal today. Just go ahead and assume you're going to be hearing him the whole episode. Oh, what am I doing? Come on, man. Is it going to be all loud? Nope. There you are. I found you. Oh, weird. They gave us all colored names again. I wonder why they do that. What's up, Glimmer of Freak? What's up, Matthew? What's up, Mr. Satan? What's up, The Burger Man? What's up, Rasta? What's up, Chris? What's up, Grey Wolf? What's up, Paw Patrol? What's up, Saw Dog? What's up, Damon Walker? What's up, B? What's up, Sassy Patriot? What's up, Sam? Happy freedom, you hooligans. What's up, Tony? What's up, Snooks? What's up, Tina? What's up, Fitzy? What is up, everyone? I appreciate all of you being here. Since this is a fresh system, I'm assuming as I go through here, we're going to hear doubled up audio, and I will take care of it. I went through it all again yesterday. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it, because I think they watch and learn from what I say, but they put me through it again yesterday. I woke up, everything was signed out. Problems, but they're getting resolved. We'll just say that. They're getting resolved. What is up, everyone, on the JeffMAC Live YouTube channel? Appreciate you guys being here. Klaus Daniels, stop that. I'm wrecking my stuff. What's up, everyone, on Twitch? What's up, Two Ruby Shoes? What's up, Peyton? Happy freedom, hooligans. Let's see. Oh, no. Why is Kick not working? Oh, Kick's working. Nobody's watching, but that's okay. At least we're live. That's all that matters. We're live. I don't know if you can hear this cat just tearing my stuff up. What's up, everyone on Odyssey? What's up, Anthony? What's up, Sam? What's up, Daisy Lalo? Appreciate you guys being here. Happy freedom. I'm using this Brave browser that Edward suggested. It's actually kind of awesome. It's kind of awesome. I like it better than Chrome. What's up, everyone on Rumble? What's up, Rasta? What's up, Free Mind Art? What's up, Dancing Diana? What's up, Truth Paves? Let's see. What's up, Q17? Yeah, I'm glad to have my stuff back. I wish they would stop trying to take it, though. They took over my Facebook, and yesterday they were approved for running ads in French. And right now they're racking up a bill in my name with my face. It's been a rough few days. What's up, Serum? I'm watching Kick spiritually. I appreciate you, Serum. I actually kind of like Kick. It's almost exactly like Twitch. It's like a Twitch knockoff, but things are a little bit more free over there. What's up, 6ix9ine? What's up, Donna Sparks? What's up, everyone on the JeffMacLive.com website? What's up, Sam? Happy freedom. All right, here's the schedule. I know I'm late for the press briefing, but we're going to watch it anyways. So we're going to be starting off with the press briefing. Then we're going to cover a video titled Texas Getting Ready to Raid Migrant Island Hideout, which is actually arresting people who aren't supposed to be here, which is pretty interesting. So I thought we'd cover that. The next video is titled Is Walmart Replacing Workers with Robots? Walmart is like a testing ground for AI. Their camera system is crazy, and they're constantly implementing new things to track people. Like when you don't scan something on the self-checkout, they know it, and they let you go home with your stolen goods. And when you rack up a bill over $100, they just send the police to your house. Their cameras are so advanced that when you open your wallet or whatever to pull cash out, pull cards out, if they can see your ID, they can zoom all the way in to see your address. They can, see your height and weight and eye color and whatever's on your ID. Their cameras are advanced, and now it has AI in it. It's not going to talk about that in that video, but just thought I'd mention that. I go to Walmart all the time, so I always pay attention to what I'm walking into. Places like a battleground. The next video we're going to cover is called China Trying to Replace the Dollar with Yuan. I think it's weird that nobody's talking about that. It was very hard to find videos talking about countries trying to replace the US dollar, trying to knock us down from being the world currency. I don't know why no one's talking about it. I'm seeing a lot of articles about it, but there's no videos on it except for this one I just found that's like 4 days old. After that, we have a video that is titled Doocy Asks KJP point blank, why did old man Walter make untrue claim about Chinese spy balloon? It's a minute long video. The only reason we're covering that is because I wasn't live yesterday, because I was fighting evil. So we're going to watch that. It's just really quick, and it's Peter, which is usually the whole point why everyone watches. Then after that, we have a video titled Democrat Lawmaker Reveals Why She's Leaving the Blue Team Party. And then we'll be wrapping things up on the YouTube side of things, showing some of the Paris protests. It's live right now. I don't know if it'll be live by the time we get to it, but we'll skim through it and keep up to date with what's going on over there. Then on the non-YouTube platforms, we have an MTG video talking about the Orange Eagle and how she was heckled when she went to New York. And then we have another video titled, well, I'm not going to say what's titled, but Orange Eagle's lawyer talking about how Bragg is going to go down as a disgrace. So that is the lineup for today. In my Forrest Gump voice. All right, so we're going to get this started. Go ahead and hit that like button, rack those likes up. Let's get this chat filled up. And let's get her started, hooligans.
Prostitute.
Oh, I heard a knock 'em dead. All right, everybody. Happy Thursday. Good afternoon. I have a few things at the top before I turn it over to the Admiral. As I was walking out here today, we saw news that Republican legislators in Tennessee were preparing to vote on the expulsion of 3 Democratic officials who stood in solidarity with children and families peacefully protesting for action on gun safety. The fact that this vote is happening is shocking, undemocratic, and without precedent. Across Tennessee and across America, our kids are paying the price for the actions of Republican lawmakers who continue to refuse to take action on stronger gun laws. The president will continue to call on Congress to take action to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, require safe storage of firearms, eliminate gun manufacturers' immunity from liability, and require background checks for all gun sales. And state officials must do the same. This has been one of the worst weeks of 2023 so far in terms of anti-LGBTQ bills becoming law in states across America. 3 anti-LGBTQ laws have been enacted so far this week in Kansas, Indiana, and Idaho. Just yesterday, the North Dakota Senate passed 10 anti-LGBTQ bills in just one day. A single day.
Awesome.
In Kansas, the state legislation overrode Governor Kelly's veto to make Kansas the 20th state that has banned transgender kids from participating in schools sports. With the enactment of a new law in Indiana, 14 states have now banned gender-affirming health care, while some of these laws are currently blocked by courts. This is a dangerous attack on the rights of parents to make the best health care decisions for their own kids. According to the Human Rights Campaign, more than 50% of transgender youth in the U.S., which is estimated to be more than 150,000 kids, live in states in which transgender youth have lost access to or at risk of losing access to gender-affirming care. Look, this is awful news. Let's be very clear about that. LGBTQI+ kids are resilient. They are fierce, they fight back, they're not going anywhere, and we have their back. This administration has their back. We are so proud of the kids across this country who have organized protests and school walkouts to tell the politicians in their states to stop this legislative bullying. I know that these political attacks can really take toll on people's mental health. So I want to say directly to LGBTQI+ kids, you are loved just as you are, just the way you are. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, you call.
She's crazy.
The National Crisis Hotline and dial the number 3 to talk to a counselor who has been specifically trained to support LGBTQI+ kids.
They're a therapist?
This is a service that the Biden administration is proud to offer during these incredibly hard times for these trans kids. Now, one last thing before we move on to the briefing on Sunday. Oh. Okay, so the in-town pool has to gather for the president's departure. And we'll just continue.
She's so off her rocker. There's no such thing as shape-shifting children.
We'll still continue with the briefing.
That's predator talk.
So just so we can go quickly here, I want to give you guys a week ahead, as we normally do on Fridays. On Sunday, the president and the first lady. Let's do this quietly, friends. Thank you.
Watch your mouth, KJP.
On Sunday, the president and the first lady.
Don't talk like that unless you can fight.
Camp David. On Monday, the president and the first lady will host the 2023 White House Easter egg roll, a tradition dating back to 1878. A teacher for more than 30 years, First Lady Jill Biden is continuing her theme of education for the event, transforming the South Lawn and the Ellipse into a school community full of fun educational activities for children of all ages to enjoy. In addition, the time-honored traditions of rolling and hunting eggs, this year's White House Easter egg education roll will also feature a schoolhouse activity area, reading nook, talent show, field trip to the farm, picture day, a physical education zone, a snack time tent, and more. On Tuesday through Friday, the president will travel to the United Kingdom and Ireland. The president will first travel to Belfast, Northern Ireland, from April 11th through April 12th to mark the tremendous progress since the signing of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement 25 years ago, and to underscore the readiness of the United States to support Northern Ireland's vast economic potential to the benefit of all communities. The president will then travel to Ireland from April 12th through April 14th. He will discuss our close cooperation on the full range of shared global challenges. He will also hold various engagements, including in Dublin, County Louth, and County Mayo, where he will deliver an address to celebrate the deep historic ties that link our country.
Captain Mayo.
On Monday, we'll have some more to share about the details of that trip. Now, finally, as many of you know, over the past many months, departments and agencies key to the Afghanistan withdrawal have been conducting thorough internal after-action reviews examining their decision-making process and execution. Those reviews fed into a process looking across the administration, and today, the NSC will also be releasing a document that provides our perspectives, outlines in broad strokes some of what we learned, and how we have already implemented those lessons in other global challenges. My colleague, Admiral John Kirby, is here today to discuss that document, and we, with all of you today, and answer your questions. And with that, Admiral, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I want to start today by, again, updating you, as Karine said, on the administration's work to assess the withdrawal from Afghanistan. As you all know, over these many months, departments and agencies key to the withdrawal conducted thorough internal after-action reviews, each of them examining their decision-making processes, as well as how those decisions were executed. Today, they are making those reviews available to relevant committees in the Senate and in the House, as previewed by Secretaries Blinken and Austin in testimony last month. Those reviews as Karine said rightly, fed into a process looking across the administration. So today, we are also making available to all of you and to the public a document that provides our perspectives on the withdrawal and outlines in broad strokes some of what we learned, as well as how we are all
Those broad strokes, they'll get you every time.
those lessons. That document will be posted to the White House website at the conclusion of my briefing. But I'd like to take some time, if you'll allow me, to provide you an overview. First, and most critically, the President's decision to end the war in Afghanistan was the right one. The United States had long ago accomplished its mission to remove from the battlefield the terrorist who attacked us on 9/11 and to degrade the terrorist threat to the United States from Afghanistan. And now, with that war over, we can more squarely address the most pressing challenges of our day. America is on a stronger strategic footing, more capable to support Ukraine and to meet our security commitments around the world, as well as the competition with China, because it is not fighting a ground war in Afghanistan. Of course, we continue to address terrorist threats, which, as the President accurately assessed, had migrated to other parts of the world through effective over-the-horizon operations, including those that took out the leaders of al-Qaeda and ISIS, al-Zawahiri and Haji Abdullah, respectively. But while it was always the President's intent to end that war, it is also undeniable that decisions made and the lack of planning done by the previous administration significantly limited options available to him. President Biden inherited a force presence in Afghanistan of some 2,500 troops. That was the lowest since 2001. He inherited a special immigrant visa program that had been starved of resources. And he inherited a deal struck between the previous administration and the Taliban that called for the complete removal of all U.S. troops by May of 2021, or else the Taliban, which had stopped its attacks while the deal was in place, would go back to war against the United States. The President's transition team asked to see plans for that removal. They asked to see plans for a security transition to the Afghan government. And they asked to see plans to increase the processing of special immigrant visas. None were forthcoming. Transitions matter. That's the first lesson learned here. And the incoming administration wasn't afforded much of one. Thus, President Biden's choice was stark. Either withdraw all our forces or resume fighting with the Taliban. He chose the former. But even in so doing, secured extra time to conduct that withdrawal, stretching it out to August.
Lying makes you...
And that's the second point worth making. Despite having his options curtailed, President Biden led a deliberate, rigorous, and inclusive decision-making process that was responsive to facts on the ground.
Trump did it.
Keenly on the need for proper planning. In fact,
Cry hard for his Captain Hot Dog fingers.
national security leaders to begin planning for a withdrawal even before he had made the final decision to leave Afghanistan. He ordered troop reduction plans, plans to turn over bases and equipment to the Afghan government as the previous administration had negotiated, plans to draw down our diplomatic presence, and plans to evacuate both American citizens and Afghan allies alike. Indeed, evacuation planning started in spring of 2021, and the President ordered additional military forces pre-positioned in the region by midsummer in case they were ever needed. Throughout, President Biden insisted that his team plan for worst-case scenarios, such as the fall of Kabul, even though the intelligence community's assessment when he was making the decision in early 2021 was that Taliban advances would accelerate only after the withdrawal of U.S. forces. The President repeatedly requested assessments of the trajectory of the conflict from his military and his intelligence professionals. No agency predicted a Taliban takeover in 9 days. No agency predicted the rapid fleeing of President Ghani, who had indicated to us his intent to remain in Afghanistan up until he departed on the 15th of August. And no agency predicted that the more than 300,000 trained and equipped Afghan national security and defense forces would fail to fight for their country, especially after 20 years of American support. In fact, the assessment was that the promotion of acting Defense Minister Bismillah Khan Mohammadi would actually strengthen their resolve to stay and fight. And so, another lesson learned was the need to plan early and extensively for low probability, high risk scenarios. I should note here that our experiences in Afghanistan informed our decision to set up a small group of experts for worst-case scenario planning on Ukraine, which included simulation exercises and our ability to forcefully and plainly speak publicly about the risks we saw of a pending invasion. Now look, there's always going to be tension between highlighting warning signs that a country may collapse and undermining that same government. And that's a difficult balance to strike. But in Ukraine, and before that in Ethiopia, for that matter, we prioritized earlier drawdowns of our personnel when each of those capitals were under threat. In fact, months before Russia's invasion, we released intelligence with trusted partners, and our warnings about the invasion grew louder and more public.
Why is he even talking about this? What does this even matter at this point?
Help enable Americans in Ukraine to depart safely. And just to remind, we continue to facilitate the safe departures of Americans from Afghanistan when they tell us they are ready to leave. And we have proudly welcomed nearly 100,000 of our Afghan partners and their family members to the United States. Many of these families left Afghanistan after the withdrawal, and they continue to arrive on a regular basis. Now, I'd be remiss here if I did not also express our gratitude to the many private and nonprofit groups, including those comprising veterans of the war, who helped us identify, contact, and arrange for the safe transport of thousands of these brave Afghans. Without their help, or the incredible assistance we received from countries in Europe and the Middle East that allowed us to use their facilities as way stations, we could not have moved as many people as quickly as we did. And that's yet another lesson that we learned. This one about the power of allies, partners, and friends. Now, we know we need more help, which is why we urge Congress to assist us in improving the Special Immigrant Visa Program and by passing the Afghan Adjustment Act, both of which will make it easier for us to keep meeting our commitments to our Afghan allies.
Why don't you meet your commitments to the American people? Why don't you work on that a little bit?
Complete, without mention of the deadly attack on the Abbey Gate at Hamid Karzai International Airport on the 26th of August. The President at the time made it clear to operational commanders that force protection remained his highest priority. In those tense days, when the threat was particularly high, he accepted the recommendation of his national security team to extend the timeline for evacuations only after his senior military officials confirmed that they had sufficient resources and authorities to mitigate threats, including those threats posed by ISIS-K. He trusted the best judgment of his leaders on the ground to make all operational decisions, including with regard to Abbey Gate. The President and the First Lady will always honor the sacrifices of the 13 service members who were killed in that attack, and we will never forget their families. We will mourn with them, remember with them, and support those Gold Star families. We mourn as well the loss of those Afghans killed by that suicide bomber on that day and others who lost their lives during the withdrawal. And we will always honor the bravery and selflessness of every member of the military, the Foreign Service, the intelligence community, and our civil service, who made possible the largest airlift evacuation in military history, and all under the constant threat of attack. The effort was certainly not without days of pain, hardship, or bloodshed, but neither was it without courage, or poise, or professionalism. For all the lessons that we take away, we should remember that over 20 years of war, and in its final days, these men and women saw things and did things and carry things with them that you and I will never fathom. We must make sure that they and their families know that their service mattered. We must make sure they get the help and the support that they need. We must make sure that their legacy is never forgotten. They ended our nation's longest war. That was never going to be an easy thing to do. And as the President himself has said, it was never going to be low grade or low risk or low cost. We should be humble enough to let that also be a key lesson learned from Afghanistan. Thank you. I'll take some questions.
So, John, thank you for doing this, but I think I speak on behalf of my colleagues in this room.
Sam, you cracked me up.
Reflect that this was sent to us about 10 minutes before the briefing began, with little notice, and it's the very definition of a modern major holiday news dump. You're releasing this at the beginning of the high holidays, and after months of requests from Republicans and the broader public. So why today? And is this all we get? And is this a response to the studies that were done by the agencies? Or is this considered a summary of it?
And there's a lot there. This is the result of months and months of work by individual agencies who are participating in the withdrawal to voluntarily review that withdrawal, which they did. They worked through that. These documents are classified. And we felt it was the responsible thing to do after those reviews were done to then run a process across the administration to take a look at those reviews ourselves across the interagency, work our way through it, and then provide them to the relevant committees and leaders on the Hill, which we did today. We think that was the responsible thing to do. And what you're seeing today is the result and the culmination of an awful lot of work, Ed. No effort here to try to obfuscate or try to bury something. It's an effort to try to be as open, as transparent as we can be. And what you got in that document there is a pretty fair summary of our perspectives of the work over those many months and pulling and collating a lot of those lessons learned together. And we're trying to present certainly the key lessons learned, the ones that we're able to share more openly and more publicly with you. And I'll tell you this. You got questions after the briefing today? I'll stay here as long as you want. But you got questions after the briefing today? You know how to get a hold of me. We'll answer whatever you have.
He wants to go outside. You want to meet me outside, bud?
On page 8, the president
Take you out back at the bleachers.
advice of his top national security officials to end the evacuation on August 31st. What is the definition of a top national security official? Because we know, for example, that General McKenzie, who was then head of CENTCOM, has said he objected to aspects of this. So what's the definition of a top national security official?
I am loath to get into the individual advice that individual members of the president's team give him. That would not be appropriate for me, but I can tell you
That sounded like a Heine Harris line.
that the president specifically asked his team, should we extend past the 31st? He specifically asked them to go back and look and see what that would look like, because we had secured this additional time from the Taliban to the 31st of August. And the team did that. The team did that, Ed, not just at the highest levels of the Pentagon, from the Secretary to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs to General McKenzie, but even the operational commanders on the ground. And there were numerous flag and general officers on the ground at the airport. All of them took a fair look at the president's request and came back to him
Are they all top national security
and
officials?
said that it would not be advisable, given the high threat environment. Remember what also happened on the 26th, that attack at Abbey Gate? And then we had a very high temp between the 26th and the 30th, in which, of course, there was a kinetic strike taken in downtown Kabul. There was high temp. And so the advice of his senior national security team all the way up to the senior levels of the Pentagon advised him that the 31st was the appropriate date to end that evacuation.
There's 4 pages here of blame on the previous administration, or this White House explanation of what the last White House did regarding Afghanistan. Nowhere in here does there appear to be any expression of accountability or mistake by either the president himself or others. Is there any for what happened?
I would argue that the very fact that we voluntarily, the agencies voluntarily decided to go conduct after-action reviews. Nobody told them to do that. That wasn't legislated by Congress. They did that on their own. And the fact that they did that, and that we were now placing it on the Hill for Congress to look at, the fact that we digested and distilled some of the key points of that and gave it out in a public document, the fact that I'm up here talking to you about it, I think shows you how seriously that the president felt about learning lessons from this withdrawal. I would also point out to you that the work isn't over. So, number one, even before you got that document, some of those lessons were applied. I talked about Ethiopia. I talked about Ukraine. And number two, it's not like the work is all over. The president signed the legislation enabling the Afghan War Commission to be formed, and we're going to continue to work and cooperate with that. That's going to look at the whole 20 years. America's longest war deserves a lengthy review and lengthy study, and the president's committed to that.
Go, Mary's.
Thank you. In reading this, you seem to be conceding that evacuation should have happened sooner and faster, saying we now prioritize earlier evacuations, noting that today you would message evacuations more aggressively. I understand you've made clear the president does not have any regrets about his decision to withdraw. But in hindsight, in reading this, does the president have any regrets about how this withdrawal was carried out?
The president's very proud of the manner in which
He doesn't know if he's proud or not.
the Foreign Service.
Thank you so much, Mr. Beansy Beans, for gifting out 10 subscriptions over on Twitch. You're awesome. Thank you, Mr. Beansy Beans. You're awesome.
Operations my entire life, and there's not a single one.
Old man Walter doesn't even know that report came out. Doesn't know anything.
Things happen. Sometimes enemies get a vote.
Surely is. Who's the man on the top right? That's actually KJP's face, although I should switch it out to Kirby. I should just put a vacuum up there instead of
That balance of striking.
mannequin.
When do you pull out when a government is under threat, particularly a friendly government, and do so in a way that doesn't undermine the very government you're trying to support? That's a tough balance to strike, and it's different in every single case. And as I said, we learned from Afghanistan, and we applied that lesson in Ukraine and Ethiopia, that being aggressive in the information space and being willing to move a little sooner may be the best thing.
But does he wish he had done things differently?
The president, I think everything is laid out here in this document about the main takeaways, the main lessons that we learned. Again, the president's enormously proud of the men and women who conducted this withdrawal.
And just one last thing. On the last page here, you note that the speed and ease with which the Taliban took control of Afghanistan suggests that there was no scenario except a permanent and significantly expanded U.S. military presence that would have changed the trajectory. I wonder, what is your message to the veterans, to the families of the fallen, who may read that and wonder, what was the point?
The president said many times that the mission that we originally were sent in to Afghanistan for was accomplished a long, long time ago. Remember, they were ordered in under President Bush to avenge the 9/11 attacks and to go specifically after Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda. And decimating and degrading al-Qaeda's capability in Afghanistan was a mission that we accomplished a long, long time ago. And over time, the president has talked about this, the mission in Afghanistan morphed into something it wasn't intended to originally be. That doesn't, just because the mission changed over time under previous administrations and leadership and scenarios, doesn't mean that anybody who served in Afghanistan doesn't have something to be proud of, doesn't have
Just so you don't know.
service to this country that they can take with them the rest of their lives and feel honorable about it. They didn't make those decisions. They signed up. They raised their right hand, all volunteers at a time of war, to say, yeah, put me in. I'm going to go fight. And some of them didn't make it back. And everybody that made it back a little bit different than when they left. And the president and the first lady understand that and respect that. And they should know that they'll always have the commitment of the commander-in-chief and the respect of the country for doing that.
Mandita, and then we're going to get around there.
Thanks, Karine. The report says the Trump administration's 4 years of neglect, including deliberate degradation, left Afghanistan operations in despair. Could you be specific about deliberate degradation? What are you specifically referring to?
There are many aspects if you look at the Doha Agreement and what led up to that. When President Trump took office, there was more than 10,000 American troops in Afghanistan. He took it down to 2,500. He negotiated the release of 5,000 Taliban prisoners that were being held by the Ghani government without consultation with the Ghani government. He negotiated the Doha Agreement with the Taliban without the Ghani government in the room. And he all but froze the special immigrant visa program, which had been providing opportunities for some of our Afghan allies to get out of the country and to come back. So it was a general
Doha Agreement?
and neglect
I don't understand why this is like the theme of the press briefing.
inherited.
What does this stuff matter at this point?
Underestimate the effect that Doha Agreement had on the morale and the
And he choked on the truth. Chokes on something.
willingness to fight on the Afghan National Security and Defense Forces. It had a very corrosive effect on their willingness to continue to fight for their country. Now, we didn't see that. We didn't see that. And part of the reason we didn't see that is because we couldn't see the plans that the previous administration allegedly worked on during the transition. No, as I said in my opening statement, none of those plans were forthcoming.
So would you say that the points that you just listed especially were the ones that made this transition?
Those were
so
some of
much
the key
harder?
ones.
Okay. And a quick follow-up on what the report says about the administration not broadcasting loudly about any potential worst-case scenarios out of concern. It would signal lack of confidence in the Afghan government's position. We obviously ended up seeing Ghani flee the country.
Yeah.
And so was that a well-thought-out decision?
What was what a well-thought-out decision? His decision to flee?
Not broadcasting loudly any concerns about the lack of confidence in the Afghan government.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, as I said, it's a difficult balance to strike, and we were having internal conversations. In fact, we had conversations with the Ghani government about our concerns over what was happening in the countryside throughout Afghanistan there in early August, and where we came down on was not calling for an evacuation sooner because we didn't want the Ghani government to collapse. And we had every assurance made by President Ghani that he wasn't going anywhere, that he was still in charge, that he still had a viable administration. And so, you know, when do you make that call? And it's difficult. It's tough to do it in the moment. And nobody can predict the future. Again, as I said, we learned from that experience and we applied a more aggressive approach, if you will, in Ethiopia and in Ukraine. But every instance is different. Every capital that's under threat is under a different kind of threat, and you have to evaluate it.
Fill in the back. I'll
Thank you.
promise I'll get it over the back.
That summer before the withdrawal, there was a dissent channel cable that was written by 23 State Department officials there at the Kabul embassy, warning that the administration, in their view, was not prepared at that moment for the withdrawal. I'm curious, did this review take that dissent cable into account?
You'll have to talk to the State Department. The State Department conducted an after-action review that, and so did the DOD, and that's a question better put to them.
And then one specifically then for the president and this administration. I'm curious if there was a moment during the Afghanistan withdrawal that the president lost confidence in the assessments that were given to him by the intelligence community and lost confidence in the intelligence community itself, given that they failed to foresee how quickly the Taliban would advance and Kabul would fall.
The president knows how hard people work across the administration to try to give him the best information that they can.
Old man Walter doesn't know anything.
Throughout the entire withdrawal, he was constantly pulsing the national security team about this or that assessment and constantly challenging them.
I don't understand why they keep bringing Kirby out. He doesn't say anything. It says a whole bunch of nothing.
Understand what was going on the ground.
And then Trump did it.
Some of the assessments that was produced, as I put in my opening statement, were proved out to be not correct. But he again, this was an honest effort by everybody to try to get at the right outcome.
No one doubts that they weren't working hard, but their assessment was flawed and they failed in that assessment. Has anyone been held accountable?
Peter looks ready.
A wrong view of how things were turning out on the ground.
They probably won't even call on him. Is Simon there?
Look at every day, but let me tell you something. It's a mosaic. It's really hard, and I've yet to see an intelligence assessment that ever was 110% certain about something. They get paid to do the best they can, weaving in multiple sources of information, sometimes in real time, without even a lot of time to process, and they do the best they can. Do they always get it right? They'll be the first ones if they were up here to tell you they don't always get it right. And clearly we didn't get things right here with Afghanistan about how fast the Taliban were moving across the country. I don't think we fully anticipated the degree to which they were constructing these deals in the hinterlands that kind of fell.
Hands.
We didn't anticipate.
Trump will be blamed 100 years from now. It's going to be in the history books. They're just going to list a whole bunch of events and then just be like, Trump did it. 20 years, trained and equipped them. I don't think we fully appreciated the degree of corruption that was in the officer ranks in the military. I could go on and on and on. But it doesn't mean that
people weren't trying and doing their best effort to understand that. But intelligence and getting it right every single time, man, that's a tough hill to climb. Doesn't mean that they don't try.
Karine, thank you. And John, thank you for being here. It seems like page after page, this places the blame on the previous
You see the gears turning in Peter's head.
choices for how to execute a withdrawal from.
Look at him looking at KJP. He's like, don't look at me. I can smell your breath from here.
Yeah. Let me just follow up with you on something that Ed was asking, which is, does the president take responsibility for the withdrawal and everything that happened thereafter?
He's the commander-in-chief, and he absolutely has responsibility.
All right.
The operations that our men and women conduct and the orders that he gives, and he continues to believe that the order to withdraw from Afghanistan was the right one. And if you just look, Kristen, at what's happened since we pulled out of Afghanistan and see what the United States military has been better able to do on behalf of the American people, I think there's only one conclusion you can come to, and that it was the right decision.
And as you list the things that could have
But
been...
wait, before I answer that, but you need to remember, and I get the question about, the previous administration. You got to look at when he came into office, what he was walking into. He didn't negotiate with the Taliban. He didn't invite the Taliban to Camp David. He didn't release 5,000 prisoners. He didn't reduce force levels in Afghanistan to 2,500. And he didn't have an arrangement with the Taliban that they won't attack our troops. He came in with a certain set of circumstances. He had no ability to change. He had to deal with it based on what he inherited.
And yet he had 8 months to plan, did he not?
He had to take 8 months to plan because whatever plans there might have been done by the previous administration, we didn't see. And it was not apparent that there was a lot of planning done. So yes, he took some time to work through that. I don't think he could be blamed for that. In fact, he enabled and was able to secure from the Taliban extra time on the clock, because by May 1st, you might remember, they were going to come in guns a-blazing. Hang on a second. I'll get to you. They were going to come in guns a-blazing on May 1st. He got us till the end of August so that we could do, I mentioned that in my opening statement, proper planning that accounted for high-risk scenarios and probabilities that we hadn't thought of before, so that he could get military forces pre-positioned in the region, so that if we had to go in and conduct an evacuation, they could do that. And you know how fast they got there? 48 hours when we ordered a NEO, a non-combatant evacuation, because he put them there and he had to have time to do that.
What does the president believe, what mistakes does the president believe he made?
I'm not going to speak for the president on that score. What I can tell you is that, again, we've done a good faith effort here to work through the lessons learned of this withdrawal. And we've already started to apply those lessons. The president ran a very inclusive, very rigorous, very flexible process that was responsive, as I said, to the views of operational commanders on the ground. He repeatedly asked for and received assessments almost every day about what was going on, and acted in accordance with the best judgment of his advisors, particularly military advisors, as things were unfolding.
John, just finally, given the enormity of this report, given the American lives that were lost, why are we not hearing directly from the president?
We are putting this forth for you and for Congress today, and I think you've heard from the president. He has talked many times about his decision to withdraw.
That hacker is sending me scam emails right now.
He has talked publicly about the withdrawal before, and about the courage and sacrifice and the professionalism, and he has been, he and the First Lady have been very open and honest and transparent about the sorrow that they feel for those that lost their lives.
Peter, and then I'll go in the back.
Thanks. John, who's going to get fired over this?
Peter, the purpose of the document that we're putting out today is to sort of collate the chief reviews and findings of the agencies that did after-action reviews. It's not the purpose of it is not accountability. It's the purpose of it is
Military leaders.
Purpose
giving
of it
advice.
is
Doesn't
to
sound like
study
it was good.
lesson
You admit
learned.
that the intel was bad. So how can President Biden ever trust when they come into the Oval Office with the PDB that anything in there is legit?
What I said was,
That intelligence is a mosaic. What if the mosaic, all the pieces are incorrect?
what I said was intelligence is hard business, and they get it right a lot too. There were some pieces here that weren't accurate, and we're being nothing but honest with you and the American people about what those inaccuracies were and how they shaped some of the decision making that was laid before the president and the questions that he asked. This document and this effort isn't about accountability today. It's about understanding. And I would also add that as I said to Ed, the review process isn't over. This is the next muscle movement in what will be a long process to better understand and comprehend and adjust to what we learned and what we did in Afghanistan.
But it doesn't seem like after the country has had a couple months to review this, and as the government has, people don't have an issue with the decision to order troops out of Afghanistan. It is with the way that this president ordered it done. There were children being killed. There were people hanging off of Air Force jets that were leaving, and you're saying that you guys are proud of the way that this mission was conducted?
Doesn't mean
of that?
Proud of the fact that we got more than 124,000 people safely out of Afghanistan? You bet. Proud of the fact that American troops were able to seize control of a defunct airport and get it operational in 48 hours? You bet. Proud of the fact that we now have about 100,000 Afghans, our former allies and partners, living in this country and working towards citizenship? You bet. Does that mean that everything went perfect in that evacuation? Of course not. I've talked about it from a different podium. The after-action reviews are now being reviewed by members of Congress, which will lay out things that could have gone better. Nobody's saying that everything was perfect, but there was a lot that went right. And a lot of Afghans are now living better lives in this country and other countries around the world because of the sacrifices and the work of so many American government officials. So yeah, there's a lot to be proud of, Peter.
That's it. Thank you, Karine. Thanks, John. Just to follow up on my colleague's questioning about the blame assigned to the previous administration.
You could see my customer service voice on the phone.
How is the Trump administration responsible for the disorganized and chaotic process of evacuation and determining who gets to board these evacuation flights? I mean, you mentioned that there's a review in terms of the lessons learned. Can you share some of those lessons learned, just specifically in terms of who gets to board evacuation flights?
I'm not going to go beyond the review, the document that you have today, or my comments today. But I'm actually glad for the question. Because I remember going through all that. And those first few days were very, very tough. They were very hectic because we didn't have a force presence at Karzai International Airport. We were still in the process of taking those pre-positioned forces and getting them onto the field. And we got them there within 48 hours. And about 72 hours after that, that airport was basically, for all intents and purposes, American property, surrounded by the Taliban and ISIS-K. So they not only had to run an airport, get the radars up and going, do air traffic control, get planes coming in and getting them loaded, have medical screening, have security vetting, have diplomatic presence on the ground to make sure that we're putting the right people on planes, but also defend that airport from external threats. That's pretty remarkable. And so for all this talk of chaos, I just didn't see it, not from my perch. At one point during the evacuation, there was an aircraft taking off full of people, Americans and Afghans alike, every 48 minutes. And not one.
He didn't see no chaos. He didn't see people falling out of the sky. He doesn't know anything about 13 service members being killed. There was no chaos. People were single file line. They were laser focused.
Is there anything in the review that addresses the problem of who was in charge at that time? I think there was a lot of analysis that questions whether it should have been the military who's in charge of the evacuation versus the State Department. And that is partly the problem of the confusion. And I understand your point about planes leaving full of people, but there are also planes who left empty and people falling off planes.
I actually don't accept the premise of your question that there was some sort of confusion over who runs. It was a non-combatant evacuation operation once it was called, and the military leads those. It's pretty clear. Now, we needed the support of the State Department because you had to have diplomatic officers, consular officers.
He started his little speech here by saying that they were evacuating people
coming
in a hostile area while being under attack, and now he's saying it wasn't chaotic at all. There was no chaos.
Done something like this before, but it was very clearly.
I mean, we know he's a liar, but he could at least wait till tomorrow to like switch the story up.
Non-combatant evacuation operations are probably some of the
Stupid.
Not probably.
Come on, hooligans, rack those likes up. Let's get this chats filled up.
For any military to conduct.
And can I just follow up on the women's rights issue, John, since you're there? Since the withdrawal, Afghan women have suffered massively under the Taliban, and they have recently banned Afghan women from working as UN staff. Some believe that this is a tactic, a pressure tactic by the Taliban to secure a seat at the UN, Afghanistan's seat at the UN. Do you believe that this is a tactic that will work? Under what circumstances would the U.S. even consider allowing the Taliban have the Afghanistan seat at the UN?
Again, I think we've talked about this. I mean, we certainly condemn this approach by the Taliban. It is, and we're certainly not going to be compliant with it. If the Taliban wants international legitimacy in whatever form, then they should answer up to the commitments they made in the Doha Agreement and in other agreements.
The Doha Agreement.
Of the rights of women and girls, and they haven't. And so until they do, they're going to be continuing to struggle to gain some sort of sense of legitimacy or assistance from the rest of the world.
Karine, thank you very much. Admiral, thank you. I have two questions about this report. First question is about the intelligence angle. I think we can safely agree that anytime the assets of the intelligence community are harnessed to an assessment of a life and death matter, and the community gets that wrong, and death ensues, that qualifies as an intelligence failure. First question here is whether, since you have acknowledged, essentially, without calling it as such, an intelligence failure in this case, do we know why the intelligence communities got it wrong? What was it? Cultural? Was it specific? Was it analytical? What was the problem with the intelligence community here?
The intelligence community also conducted after-action reviews, and I'd let them speak to that. I'm not going to do that from here.
Second question. We in this room hear you saying, and the American people hear you saying, that President Biden inherited bad policies from President Trump.
No. Bad outcomes, bad conditions on the ground. That's what I said.
Well, you said he reduced the force to 2,500. You're characterizing that as a bad policy, yes?
I'm characterizing that as a fact.
Okay. What we hear you saying, let me finish my question, please, and what the American people hear you saying is President Biden inherited flawed policies from his predecessor. President Biden was deprived of the requisite transition papers he should have received from his predecessor, and President Biden was deprived of accurate information from President Ghani about his intentions, and President Biden was deprived of accurate assessments from the intelligence community. The depiction of the commander-in-chief that you present, or this commander-in-chief, is of a figure almost helpless and shaped and buffeted by
you hear how he worded that?
And entities that are beyond his control, when he had every option to increase the troop size there during his 8 months in office. He had every option to intensify attacks on the 5,000 Taliban fighters and so on. So I just don't understand why you're willing to depict your boss, the commander-in-chief, as so helpless in this instance.
The president was anything but helpless. He drove a very, as I said, a deliberate and inclusive decision-making process. He was able to secure some extra time for us to be able to conduct a withdrawal and do so effectively. He repeatedly, as I said in my opening statement, throughout the entire withdrawal, pulsed his national security team and senior military leaders about the conditions on the ground, asking tough questions and getting answers and getting responses. And he acted on the best military judgment and the best assessments from the intelligence community as he could, as he made these decisions going forward. And some of those assessments turned out to be wrong. But it wasn't for a lack of alacrity and energy and interest by the president in pulsing and questioning and analyzing all the way through. And this was difficult. As I said at the very end of my opening statement, ending a war, any war, is not an easy endeavor, certainly not after 20 years. And the president said himself there was no way in that process, that it was going to be low grade, low cost, low risk. There was going to be risks. There were going to be costs. He knew that. The team knew that. And everybody tried the best they could to develop the best answers, the best responses, the best assessments that they could. The president relied on that judgment, but he kept challenging it all the way through. He kept challenging it. He kept asking questions.
Given the conditions, your position is everything went about as well as it possibly could have.
It's not my position, James. I would encourage you to take some time and look through the document, and you'll see that some of the key lessons learned that we took away are that you've got to really work hard at planning. You got to really work hard at interagency coordination. You got to be willing to revisit the idea of communications, crisis communications with respect to evacuations, and maybe be willing to move sooner than what some of your instincts might be. I mean, there's a lot in there, so I encourage you to take a look at that.
Why did the administration choose not to make this an independent review?
These were independent reviews. The after action, the after action reviews that were done by the Defense Department and at the State Department, they're the two prime ones that we're talking about here. They were done completely independently, and you'll see that.
Well, they're so fundamentally his cabinet agencies, his cabinet leaders conducting the agency or conducting the reviews of his actions. Why not an outside commission, outside independent person to review what the administration did?
Each of these agencies voluntarily conducted these reviews. The president didn't dictate to them how they were going to conduct those reviews. They each did it independently, differently, in a different way. But both state and DOD, did their reviews using independent entities, and then that was pushed up to back inside the lifelines at the State Department and the Defense Department. Both Secretary Blinken and Secretary Austin had a chance to digest it, look at them, review them, analyze those reviews, and then, of course, we once we did that, those reviews entered an interagency process where it was they were looked at in conjunction here at the National Security Council and across the interagency by multiple agencies to take a look at the work that the State Department and the Defense Department did and fashion together some even broader lessons learned, some of which we shared in that document that we gave you.
And I know you were asked earlier about releasing more beyond the 12-page report, and you talked about information just being very highly classified. But the president can obviously declassify anything that he wants. So would he do so in the interest of transparency, in the interest of the public knowing more about what happened with the withdrawal beyond the 12-page perspective of the NSC?
So again, a couple of things to remember. This is an ongoing process here. We also look forward to cooperating with the Afghan War Commission, which will take a look at the 20 years of war. These documents are sensitive and classified. We are taking an extraordinary step here to share.
Right now, Tennessee legislators are voting on whether or not to expel Democrats after a gun ban protest.
But the president is taking that extraordinary step to share these classified AARs, these after-action reviews, with members of Congress. And we believe that the real value in them lies in the fact that we can be sensitive. To the information in them, and so that's why we're doing it this way.
Thanks. You had said earlier this was about understanding and not accountability. I just don't know, how is this process and document not about accountability? You assign so much accountability to the Trump administration and very little comparatively to your own.
After action reviews are done it's very common practice. They are not investigations.
Yeah, it is very common practice, isn't it? Trump did it. Very common practice.
They are
their criminal proceedings.
They are studying the conduct and the execution of operations or policy. And in this case, both state and DOD have now conducted these in a classified way. The idea is to learn from them, to apply those lessons learned as needed. And as I've said, we didn't wait for these reviews to be complete before we started using some of the lessons in Ethiopia, in Ukraine. That's the purpose here. The work is about understanding what happened, what went well, what could have gone better, and then learning from that so that we don't make some of those same mistakes in the future. That's what it is. It's not hunting for heads.
Just a second one, if I could. You said the president, earlier somebody asked if the president takes responsibility for this withdrawal and what happened after. You answered and said he has responsibility. Does he take responsibility, and have you heard him say that?
The president's the commander-in-chief. And just by dint of being the commander-in-chief, he assumes responsibility for the orders he gives, the men and women who execute those operations, and in this case, it's not just the military, and he stands by that.
Way in the back.
Thank you, Karine. Thank you, John. Since the withdrawal, China has increased its economic ties with Taliban. First signing oil deal in January and now eyeing mineral contracts. Is the White House concerned about these growing economic ties between China and Taliban? And can you share some comments about it?
We look, our view, every country's got to take their own view here of how they're going to relate to the Taliban. We don't recognize them as an official government in Afghanistan. And as I've said before, if they want to be so recognized, at least by the United States, if they want to be seen as legitimate, then they need to own up to the promises they made about how they were going to govern that country and how they were going to treat their own people, including women and girls.
Just follow?
Yeah, thanks, John. Just sort of distilling some of the questions you've been asked about accountability. I appreciate the fact that lessons have been learned. And I assume that the President still has full confidence in his national security team that gave him the advice, which is pointed out in the summary. Why should the American people have confidence in all of those national security advisors, given what this report lays out?
The President does have trust and confidence in his national security team. And he did ask a lot of questions. And there was some assessments passed to him that proved faulty, that proved to be wrong, that proved to not shake out the way he had been given to understand that they would. But in the aggregate, as he looks across all the work that the national security team continues to do, before and since the withdrawal from Afghanistan, he continues to conclude that this is an extraordinarily talented group of leaders. And as you know, as I said in my opening statement, as painful at times as the withdrawal was, it wasn't without its moments of courage and poise, and it doesn't mean that it wasn't worth doing, ending that war in Afghanistan, because if you just take a look at what we've been able to do for Ukraine and how we've been able to really step up in the competition against China and deal with some of the tensions in the Indo-Pacific, it's difficult to say that we would have been able to do all that we did over the last year or so if we were still dragged down on the ground in Afghanistan. In fact, Putin and Xi probably would like nothing better than for us to still be bogged down in a ground war in Afghanistan.
Sorry, if I could just follow up. Kristen asked a question earlier. This report, this summary of your perspectives came out as the President was on his way to the Camp David retreat for the Easter weekend. When should we anticipate an opportunity for the President to stand for our questions about the findings in the study?
I don't have anything on his schedule to speak to.
Because he ain't going to answer no questions. He doesn't take questions.
Be on a different topic. I'll start with that one. The President's leaving for Northern Ireland fairly soon. Yeah. Are there any plans for him to meet with representatives of Sinn Féin and the DUP to try and resolve the impasse that's kept a functioning devolved government from being in place?
Yeah, I tell you, we're going to have, as Karine said at the top, we'll have more to talk about in terms of the specific agenda items on Monday before we leave.
Okay, and on Afghanistan, this document says there was no such plans for withdrawal in place when President Biden came into office. No plans were shared during the transition. Were there any attempts to speak with former Trump officials about whether there were plans? And does the lack of plans in place indicate that they deliberately sabotaged the incoming administration by not continuing to plan, dropping plans that were in place, or they might have been working on? Or
you see the lady behind him shaking her head over and over.
Following through with the agreement that the former president made to be out by May.
I can't speak for leaders in the previous administration, and I certainly can't speak for whatever plans they did or did not draw up. I can tell you with confidence that the transition team of the incoming administration asked repeatedly to see plans for withdrawal, for retrograde, as we say it in the military, for the special immigrant visa program, for the turnover of equipment and bases to the Afghan National Security Defense Forces. And as I said in my opening statement, none were forthcoming. It wasn't for lack of trying. They weren't sharing. And so
I gotta grab some coffee. I'll be right back.
About the length of time that it took to conduct a review was because we were almost starting from scratch. There was no visibility into what they had done. In fact, we spent quite a bit of time after coming into office, and I remember this quite clearly, trying to get our hands around the Doha Agreement and really understanding all its articles and what it meant and how it was being interpreted by the Taliban. There just wasn't any of that fingertip feel or granular awareness that we had.
The sitting administration can access documents from the prior administration. Was there any attempt to find out if they even started to plan? What was there ever a plan?
There were multiple attempts to try to gain insight as to into what the previous what the previous team had been doing. And as I said earlier, and as is indicated in that document, none of those plans were forthcoming.
All right, it's been about an hour, guys. We're going to try to become more bed, Jenny.
Thank you. Thank you, Karine, and thank you, John. I have two questions on South Korea and China. At the summit meeting between President Biden and South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol this month, what agenda are you going to be discussed this meeting?
You're way ahead of me today, Janie. I don't have any agenda items to talk about today, but certainly in due course we will.
I have the China, please. The U.S. integrated country strategy includes a new policy toward China. What tools can the United States use for China to help deter North Korea's missile and nuclear provocation?
We know that China has influence in Pyongyang, and we have long urged them to use that influence to get Mr. Kim to do the right thing and to be willing to sit down with us, as we have said we are, without preconditions, to diplomatically try to deal with a denuclearization of the peninsula.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, John, for spending a lot of time answering our questions. I have a question. What message do you have for the people around the world who don't look which administration made mistakes or failed, but lost some confidence in the United States' ability to deal with such difficult situations as in Afghanistan?
I would encourage them to look at what we have been able to achieve in the 2+ years of this administration across the board. And as I said, even in Afghanistan, because ending that war was the right thing to do for this country and our national security interests. We are on a stronger strategic footing. We are better able to deal with the most pressing challenges of the day, which are not quite, by the way, emanating out of Afghanistan. Certainly not anymore. Because we are no longer in Afghanistan. And take a look at the incredible leadership of the United States in support for Ukraine. Take a look at the NATO alliance, which now just got a new member. Take a look at the strengthening of alliances and partnerships in the Indo-Pacific, the new AUKUS deal with Australia and the UK, and the ability for them the Australians now to get a nuclear power submarine. I could go on and on and on. The president has prioritized alliances and partnerships, many of whom were left in the wake of the previous administration and denigrated. We're revitalizing them, we're bringing them back, we're reinforcing them, and America's footing on the global stage is a lot stronger now.
Yeah, thank you, Karine, thank you, John. So one on this and one on China, if I could. In looking through this, it doesn't seem to address the $7 billion in military hardware and technology that was left in Afghanistan for the Taliban. You know, the president took office in January, the withdrawal happened in August. Does the president take responsibility for leaving all or some of that?
You know who was responsible for that equipment? The Afghans. Because you know why? It was their equipment. First of all, I don't believe the number is accurate, but let's put the number aside, the $7 billion. There was very little and I mean very little, U.S.-owned equipment or U.S.-operated equipment that we left when we left Afghanistan. I'm talking like some forklifts at the airport and some ladder vehicles, some fire trucks that we were using at the airport. But the helicopters that we left there, all disabled, so the Taliban couldn't get them flying again. Whatever ground vehicles like MRAPs or Humvees, they were all disabled at the airport. Everything else outside of that airport, the stuff that's at Bagram or you pick the base in Afghanistan, was all turned over in according with a very elaborate, deliberate, retrograde plan that the U.S. military put in place to turn over all that stuff to the Afghan military. And the Afghan military, as I said in my opening statement, decided they weren't going to fight for their country, that they were just going to leave it behind. So it is the Afghans who were responsible for the turnover of all that.
So it's their fault. And now all of a sudden you magically disabled all the vehicles.
Russia became China's largest importer of oil at the beginning of this year. China's moved its credit card in to help Russia transactions. China's made a deal now with Saudi Arabia for oil transactions. They're making a deal. They're working with Brazil to move off the U.S. dollar. At what point does the president stand up and more loudly tell China to A, cut it out, or B, counter some of China's anti-U.S.
We know we're in a strategic competition with China. And we have made it clear to Chinese officials that we don't think this is a time for anybody to be supporting, in one of the cases you had, Mr. Putin's ability to profit off of oil on the market so that he can continue to kill more Ukrainians. One of the reasons why the president sat down with President Xi in Bali was to deliver some of those messages. We believe it is a competition, and we believe the United States is well poised to win that competition. We don't seek conflict with China, but we are not at all unabashed, or we are unabashed and unafraid to make it clear to the Chinese that we're going to do what we have to do to protect our national security interests. And again, this is no time to be in partnership with Vladimir Putin.
Go ahead, Esme.
Yeah, thanks. And just wanted to clarify what Ed was asking about. After January 20th, 2021, there was no ability to find plans for withdrawal and orderly withdrawal. Is that what I'm inferring, what you said about the previous administration's plans?
Oh, once you come in, you do the best you can because now you own things. You can look and see what was done, and you can study it.
Was there anything done after, not talking about the transition, but after you came into office?
Well, look, for one example I can give you for sure is that one of the early trips of 2021 that Secretary Austin made was to Kabul. And he sat down there with the ISAF commander, General Miller, and General Miller walked him through some of the retrograde plans that he had already formed up, and that acted as a basis for what we eventually executed on. But it doesn't mean that we didn't order or look for amendments and changes and that kind of thing. That's one example. I can't speak about every agency and what plans they may or may not have fallen in on. The problem is there was no visibility on that in the transition. You have a very brief period of time between election night and inauguration. And Afghanistan was one of the chief foreign policy concerns the president had coming in. And the team desperately wanted to understand the Doha Agreement, wanted to talk to experts, wanted to talk to planners, wanted to see what had been done. Because the president had already made a commitment that he wanted to end that war.
Why is he always holding his hands like crab hands? He's like always doing this stuff.
What the previous administration had done on paper. And that's difficult. So you say, okay, well, January 20th, it's all available to you, but he shouldn't have had to wait until January 20th to get access to that. It would have been better, wouldn't it, I think, for everybody, if we could come in, with deck running there right on the 20th.
On the former president has now been saying several times that, number one, China is actually running Bagram now, and it was $85 billion in brand new equipment better than we actually have. Can you address that, please?
I don't get the last claim. What?
I'm just asking.
I can't address. I don't understand it. I don't look. I'm gonna go back to the answer before. It's important because this is getting well misunderstood out there. There was a retrograde plan working towards withdrawal, where bases that we were operating out of and equipment that we had that we believe the Afghans could and should keep were turned over to them in a very thoughtful, orderly way, all the way from spring well into summer. Once you turn it over, It's just like what we're doing in Ukraine. We give Ukraine artillery ammunition, Stinger anti-air missiles, Javelin anti-tank. It's their stuff at that point, not the Americans. It's their stuff. That stuff belonged to the Afghans. And so this idea, this argument is just ludicrous that we left millions of dollars of stuff in Afghanistan. We didn't. We turned it over, as the previous administration would have done too, because part of their thinking was they were going to have to turn this material over. It was turned over appropriately and carefully and deliberately with the Afghan National Security Defense Forces.
Thank you. Just a couple quick questions on the Wall Street Journal's Jacqui Heinrich. Do you have any insight?
Is he the press secretary now or what? Like, why are we just sitting here throwing the same questions at this idiot?
We still haven't been able to get consular access, and that's an issue that we continually bring up through our embassy in Moscow with the Russians. I wish I had a good answer for that, because it's inexcusable. We need to get consular access to Evan.
At what point would the administration explore a potential prisoner swap with Russia?
I won't get ahead of where we are, and I think you can understand why we would certainly want to talk about potential negotiations here from the podium. We're at a very early stage here. Main goal is to get consular access to him so we can have that contact and that connectivity. We're doing what we can to keep his employer and the family informed. Our focus is squarely on that right now.
Two really quickly on Afghanistan and then Israel. When did President Biden get the after-action report, and has he read through the entire report?
The president has been fully briefed on both after-action reports, and he certainly has been briefed and had input on the document that you see before you today. And then on the when, I would tell you that, to Ed's question, I mean, this is a process, and he has stayed in touch with the State Department and the Defense Department as they have worked through their after-action reviews.
And then are there plans to release each of the department's reports to their respective workforces? I mean, there's people who worked on this withdrawal who want to learn the findings.
These are classified reports. I do not anticipate any release of them publicly or in a more broad fashion, but that's a better question put to the agencies.
And then on the situation in Israel, how concerned is the White House that this could escalate into a
very concerned. Yeah, we're very concerned about the violence there. We see now it increase more attacks in the last 24 hours. We're deeply concerned about that, and we call on all sides to de-escalate, reduce the violence.
Thanks. In February 2022, the Pentagon, about the Abbey Gate bombing, gave a very detailed, minute-by-minute account, very graphic nature of what happened. Why not do something more like that about this? That was very public. Why not give more details about what had happened leading up to Afghanistan, as well as the withdrawal, as well as all the chaos that happened?
You're talking about an event on a single day that the military investigated and reviewed the investigation of, and yes, they made public not everything about that investigation, but as much as they possibly could. That's different than taking a look at a withdrawal that took place over 2 weeks and involved multiple agencies. And again, I remind you that these agencies voluntarily decided on their own to do these after-action reviews with the president's, of course, full support, because he wanted to know as well. And the result coming back are sensitive classified documents. And there's no obligation to even share those with members of Congress, but we're doing that.
Jake Sullivan promised a hot wash, I think is the word he used, to describe what would come out of that. That certainly sounded like a very detailed accounting. And you say this is not about accountability, but how does the American people trust that the United States has learned from the mistakes that were made if they do not see those mistakes and see the administration acknowledging them, being public with them, and how they're going to address them?
I think that's what I'm doing today. And I think that's the document you got in front of you. I think it's also, hang on a second, it's also the fact that those after-action reviews are on Capitol Hill voluntarily so that relevant committees and relevant senior members of Congress can look at them. They are sensitive. and they are classified. And we also have a responsibility to the American people to protect some information so that it doesn't get out there, so that we can continue to apply some of those lessons in future operations. The last thing I'll say to your question is, there's an Afghan War Commission that's been legislated. The president signed that legislation. It will look at the whole war, and that will have a very public dimension to it. And this
He needs to come on. He isn't saying anything.
will actively and with
that's real informative.
I know you said you'll have more on the trip, but I had a quick question. We have a story out today that the UK is seeking to restart trade talks with the U.S. With Prime Minister Sunak. Does the U.S. have any interest in restarting trade talks with the UK, and will President Biden meet with the Prime Minister when he's in Northern Ireland?
Copious haze. Just don't live here anymore. Yeah, you're not wrong.
And as for the agenda, I think you just got to give us till Monday. We'll have much more detail on the agenda, who he's meeting with, and under what context on Monday.
The free trade question has been hanging in the air for quite some time,
I understand.
including the previous premier. Has the administration's position changed? You all seem pretty cool to the idea.
I understand. I have nothing for you on that.
Thank you.
All right, just a couple more. Two questions on Ukraine. Thank you, John. According to the Financial Times, a high-ranking advisor of President Zelensky signaled that it might not be longer a precondition to get Crimea back to start negotiations. Is that a development the White House would applaud?
First of all, I don't know that the Zelensky administration has spoken to that, and we certainly wouldn't get ahead of them. What I would tell you is, and we've said this from the very beginning, that only President Zelensky can determine if and when he's ready to negotiate and in what context and over what. We believe that nothing should be negotiated about Ukraine without Ukraine. Nothing should be done or said or moved on without President Zelensky's full approval. That's where we are.
Thank you so much. One on China, where tensions are flaring up again, especially on Taiwan, with warships being deployed, etc. Can you update us of what channels of communication are currently open between the administration and China? Is there a functional military channel in case of tensions arising? What's the state of communication between
The lines of communication with China remain open. We have communicated to China privately. We've certainly done it publicly here with y'all, that there's no reason for them to overreact to this transit. It's not uncommon for these transits to happen. They're private, they're unofficial. We would urge China not to overreact.
Just two more.
I'm sorry. So Biden ended the humanitarian parole for Afghans starting after October 1st, and benefits end later this summer. What's going to happen to them?
I think I'd have to, let me take that question, but I'll also, while I do that, I'm going to refer you to the State Department. They'll have more details on that.
And a second question, there was reporting about secret annexes to the agreement, the peace agreement that contributed to the Afghan offenses in 2021. Did the Biden administration review those annexes? What did they contain?
I'm not going to talk about what they contain, but
the administration release them?
I'm not going to talk about things that are classified, but we had an opportunity after coming into office to review in more detail the Doha Agreement and all the associated articles and pieces of it. And I would just go back to what I said before, that I think it would be difficult.
You don't think, dude?
To overstate the impact of that Doha Agreement on the Afghans' willingness to trust us, on their willingness to stay and fight for their country, and on the general morale of the Afghan people once the deal, became publicly known. It was a clear sign that America was heading for the exits and doing so in a hurry, and it had a dramatic effect on the Afghan National Security Forces.
Thanks. Thank you. You said that this was just on the withdrawal. You said that this was just one step, this report, in a better understanding, better comprehending the withdrawal, and the adjustments made accordingly afterwards. Are there any additional steps that you guys are taking? Is this the absolute final report?
No, there's an Afghan War Commission.
But in addition, or any additional final report?
aside from this that we can expect to see?
These are the after-action reports of the agencies that were most heavily involved in the withdrawal. I know of no additional after-action reviews that are being done or planned to being done. Again, they were fed into a larger administration process that the National Security Council worked to sort of coalesce these lessons learned, and the result of that extra work by the interagency is what you see before you today.
And if I can ask just one more on a separate matter. The State Department Secretary Blinken said that he has no doubt that Evan Gershkovich was wrongfully detained. Related to that, Mark Fogel's sister told NewsHour last night that her family is angered by what they consider, quote, favoritism by the administration. Fogel's sister told us that the family has not heard from President Biden or Secretary Blinken. So when will Fogel be designated as wrongfully detained, and are there any ongoing conversations with
I
him?
can't speak to that from from here. The State Department would have to deal with that. They're the ones that make determinations about wrongful detention. I would remind that each determination is done on an individual case-by-case basis.
We got to wrap this up. You, and then you have the last question.
Thank you. About the document, just to clarify, it says, and I quote, national security leaders met on August 9 and concluded conditions on the ground did not support triggering the evacuation operation. Then it says that on August 14, President Biden formally initiated this operation. Can you explain to us what happened between those two dates and between those two assessments?
Many things happen in that. In that 5 days. I don't have all my notes in front of me from then, but we continued to see, particularly over that week, the Taliban achieving more and more success in the hinterland, particularly out west and to the north, taking over district by district, province by province. And so there was this sort of rolling momentum that they had, and the danger to Kabul got more acute over the course of that 4 or 5 days. And again,
Thank you so much, FO, for that $10 donation. I appreciate you. Thank you for the classified farts. You're hilarious. Thank you.
The State Department gets to call that, but the military executes and leads it. And finding that exact moment to do it is it can be difficult, particularly when you're dealing with a government who we wanted to see succeed, wanted to see stay in power. And so you got to be careful about when you go ahead and call for a NEO, so that you're not undermining the very outcome you're trying to keep in persistence.
About China, if I may. Recently, in a congressional hearing in the House Foreign Affairs Committee, a congresswoman from Florida said that countries in Latin America, such as Venezuela and Bolivia, are allowing China to gain foothold in the region. So how would you characterize its Chinese presence in Latin America, and how big is it a security challenge for the United States?
Just in general, we see the Chinese continue to try to gain influence in Latin America, but also in Africa. And they do this in a pretty ham-fisted way with high-interest loans that some countries then end up not being able to pay back and suffer the consequences to their own economic growth and development for that. We're not asking countries to choose between the United States and China or the West and China, but we do think it's important for them to understand that in accepting Chinese help, that they are potentially putting their own economic livelihoods at greater risk.
Last question.
Yeah, John, the attack on the worshippers in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, this is a holy time for all Abrahamic faiths right now. You say you're concerned. Is that it? I mean, some of these people were worshiping, and some of them were even sleeping when they were attacked. Isn't this time to condemn?
We have. We
you said
have.
you were concerned just now.
Well, yes, I said we're concerned, but we have, in the previous few days, used that verb. We have condemned that violence. Of course we have. And you're right, people should be able to worship freely and safely, and we still stand by the status quo on the Temple Mount. That has not changed. Our policies have not changed. We urgently urge all sides to reduce this violence.
All-sides situation. I mean, right now, this was Israeli forces attacking Muslim worshippers during Ramadan.
We urge all sides to de-escalate and to reduce the violence.
But does that mean then that this is the White House taking sides? The fact
She's having a hard time. She's standing there with her legs crossed.
The side we're taking on is safety and security. The side we're taking on is the status quo. The side that we're taking is one of peaceful worship. That's the side we're taking. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, Admiral. It's over an hour. Okay. I guess if you guys still want to stick around, I'll take a couple more questions. Or if not, we can wrap this up right here, and I'll see you guys on Monday. Okay, we can take
What is the point of you existing, KJP?
Take us off.
Yes, I just have one. There was a report.
Simon's like, yes, I have a question, so we can take a couple questions.
Well, there's a report in ProPublica this morning that talked about Justice Clarence Thomas taking all of these luxury trips from a Republican mega donor, appearing not to disclose those gifts as required by law. So does the White House believe that this is a violation of ethical standards that a justice should be held to? And does the president want a more rigorous code of conduct for Supreme Court justices?
I'm not going to comment from here. There are other bodies of government that should be dealing with this. I'm just not going to comment from here.
All right, Peter.
You got this Ireland trip next week.
Oh boy.
How does
The dramatics.
How does a Biden trip to Ireland help counter China or end the war in Ukraine?
So let me just say a couple of things. The president is certainly looking forward to taking this trip to Northern Ireland and also the UK. He'll be heading out on Tuesday. We certainly will have more to share on this trip coming in the upcoming days, as my colleague just said, on Monday. But I also want to lay out here the important important history between U.S. and Ireland, right? When you think about the waves of Irish immigrants who help shape America's spirit of freedom, that's incredibly important as well. And I think telling that story, the president going there and being able to touch on his own family story and the stories of many of Americans here, Irish Americans here, as you think about how this country was created and built and put together by immigrants, I think that's important. I think that's something that's important to highlight. And the president looking forward to that.
Karine, any update on the debt limit talks? Are there any plans underway? And I know we asked you this.
I know.
For President Biden to meet with or speak with Speaker McCarthy.
Honestly, when it comes to asking me about what are the plans, I would ask the Republicans in the House. It is their constitutional duty, as we have said over and over again in the last 3 times in the last administration, Democrats met with and joined Republicans to get this done, to get something that is so critical to the American people, to taxpayers, to veterans, to seniors. And so that's actually a question for House Republicans to answer.
But given that it's so critical, Karine, why are you letting the clock tick down, an inch closer to this deadline?
I want to be very clear. I just definitely disagree with the question, Kristen, here, because it is not us, it is them. The onus is on Congress to get this done.
They're ruffling her feathers up.
Their constitutional responsibility to get this done. Republicans in the House cannot and should not be holding, our nation's debt hostage. They should not be doing that. We've been very, very clear. They did it 3 times in the last administration.
Guarantee that the U.S. won't default?
That is for House Republicans to answer. That truly is for them to deal with this situation that we have said, again, it is their responsibility, their constitutional responsibility. I can't say that enough. This should be done without negotiations. This should be done without conditions. And it has been done many times before. And they should just take this seriously. Okay.
Karine, I know we all have to write stories, but I just want to ask you, because so many people in the country have been talking about it. This came up in yesterday's briefing. LSU says that the team certainly will come, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to address some of the emotions that have been aired by some of the players, in particular Angel Reese. And what she said this week is that the shoe were on the other foot. If Iowa had won, the First Lady wouldn't have said, LSU come. Can you respond to that?
Look, first of all, as you know, the president put out a statement days ago saying how he and the First Lady are welcome and looking forward to celebrating LSU Tigers and the University of Connecticut. Clearly, the men's team, the Huskies, and that is something that is tradition here, continuing that tradition from here and celebrating the champions. And that is something that both of them are looking forward to. Look, the First Lady was honored to attend the championship game. As we know, it was a historic historic game. 9.9 million people watched that game. It was the LSU.
They think everything they do is historic.
It set a record, and we could not be more proud of them. Again, a great game and a wonderful moment for women's sports in history, something both the First Lady and
You think she has trouble talking because of alcoholism?
passionate about that, and it was truly a remarkable and important moment. And again, the First Lady was honored to be part of that. And so I will say, as I've said yesterday, and I'll say again, she and the president are truly looking forward to welcoming LSU Tigers here to celebrate them as champions, to celebrate their history victory, and we're looking forward to welcoming them. And so I'll just leave it there. Go ahead, Josh.
Just on the debt ceiling issue, there's a plan reportedly coming together with the Problem Solvers Caucus on some sort of strategy.
Sign language lady just checked out.
Is White House involved in those talks at all?
She's had enough.
Are you open to those sorts of plans, or do you need a budget from McCarthy's?
So look, we haven't. So I'll touch on both. Look, we haven't spoken to the problem solvers about that. We've made our position very clear. You heard me go back and forth with Kristen here. The debt ceiling in our economy should not be held hostage. We've been very clear about that. Republican threats of chaos and catastrophic potential outcome. That's not going to work. That is not what that is not what they should be doing as their constitutional duty. So we've been very clear on that. As far as the budget, the president put out his budget on March 9th.
I'd like to get her mug shot from when she got that DUI last week.
Conversation about the budget if they want to.
That'd be her new mascot picture.
They value what they think their fiscal responsibility is. We're happy to have that conversation. We're happy to have to sit down. The president would love to sit down and negotiate and talk through that, but they haven't been able to do that.
I still think it's crazy that this is what she looks like at home.
Excuses.
Like that's her. Like that's really her up there.
Negotiation on that. If they present something, they haven't done that yet. The debt ceiling, it should be done without negotiation. It should be done without conditions.
And very quickly on our favorite topic, the Fed Vice Chair. Very interested.
Bloomberg caring about the Vice Chair. The Fed and the Vice Chair are just surprising to me.
Today is 6 weeks since you said it would be announced in the near future. What changed, or what's the status?
It is definitely a priority for the president. I know, we understand how important this is, clearly, and so once we have a decision that is made by the president, certainly we will be sharing that. I just don't have anything to share at this time.
Do you have any message to Senator Menendez, who's called for a Latino candidate?
I don't have a message. We are going to follow the process.
Patriot operator. She probably drives a Subaru. She probably drives a Neo Tracker.
We do this in a way that's clearly looking at qualified, diverse candidates, but I'm just not going to get into specifics on his particular question or ask, I should say. All right, Mandita.
Thanks, Phil. I know you don't want to comment on the Clarence Thomas report specifically, but broadly, do you think the White House, broadly, do you think the Supreme Court, needs to impose ethics rules that lower federal courts are subjected to?
That's something for the Supreme Court to speak to. I'm just not going to comment on this at this time.
Do you think Congress needs to act?
That is something for Congress to discuss. I'm just not going to comment on this at this time. All right, I'll take one more.
Hi, thank you so much. So we've just seen the accession of Sweden and Finland to NATO. We're 3 months away from the NATO Leaders Summit in July. President Zelensky and some Eastern member states would like to see Ukraine presented with a path to citizenship, to NATO membership. Is President Biden opposed to that idea? And what causes the administration's hesitation? Is it, if that exists, is it a fear of provoking Russia, or is it apprehension that U.S. troops would have to deploy if Ukraine joins NATO before Russia leaves?
So we've spoken to this a couple of times. Look, our position is pretty clear when it comes to a NATO accession, and for decades we support an open door policy for NATO. Any decision on membership is between NATO allies and countries aspiring to join NATO, and right now
you guys are cracking me up. FO, you think she drives a Prius?
On making sure that
trying to find the other one. Somebody said she drives a clown car,
so
crystal blue.
Announce
She just pulls up in the squeaky clown car.
We have been leading in that effort. We have been also really holding NATO together, holding the West, making sure that they are aligned. And you've seen that throughout this year. And so we're going to continue to make sure that they have the economic and security assistance needed to continue to fight bravely this aggression from Russia that we have seen for over a year now. But again, this is something for between NATO allies and NATO countries to decide.
The U.S. is a NATO ally and has been the leader in those efforts for Ukraine and uniting the world. They have a lot of say over whether Ukraine will be presented with this path to possible membership. What is the U.S.'s position on it?
Again, been very clear for decades. For decades, we have been pretty consistent on this. We support an open door policy for NATO, and I'm just going to leave it there. It's been like this for decades now.
We've been clear for decades.
Yeah. Okay. I'm getting the pull here. All right. I'll see you guys on Monday.
She's getting the pull, is she?
Happy Easter.
Thank you, Karine.
Is she drunk today? I think Kirby's our new press sec. If Kirby was to be the new press secretary, we wouldn't cover the White House press briefings anymore. I cannot stand hearing him talk. He sucks. Like, that dude sucks. Let's see. What is next? Kirby had me falling asleep over here. Klaus Daniels went and had a nap. So next we're going to cover a video that is titled Texas Getting Ready to Raid Migrant Island Hideout. They're actually going to do something about the people coming here who ain't supposed to be coming here. It's about time. I mean, they're trying to match our population here. It's a full-on invasion. They're like, yeah, maybe we should do something about that. We'll see. The criminals that we have here, they don't even do more than a day in jail. What are they going to do with the illegals? Probably nothing. Bus them up to New York. Do. Alright, let's get her started, hooligans. Oh, first, I got some shout outs. I just remembered. I didn't want to interrupt KJP. What is this? Oh, I thought I was getting hacked. My anxiety is so bad. So bad. Maybe we'll do a voice chat. We'll do a voice chat this weekend, and I'll just air my grievances of how my week has been. So if you guys aren't a part of the JeffMacLive.com website, you should definitely go and claim your free week membership so you can be a part of the voice chat. It's always a good time. Thank you so much, High Plains Drifter, for the $5 donation through Cash App. I appreciate you. Thank you. And I think we got another one. Thank you so much, Molly, for the 5 coffees on the Buy Me a Coffee app. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for the support. All right, hooligans, let's get her started.
All right, the Texas General Land Office helping the state battle President Biden's wide-open border crisis by giving the Texas Department of Public Safety access to patrol several acres of land. Well, the islands in the middle of the Rio Grande are hot spots, now we are learning, for illegal migrants. They are hiding there and evading arrest. Joining me right now in this Fox Business exclusive is Texas Land Commissioner Dr. Dawn Buckingham. Dr. Buckingham, thanks very much for being here. We are interested in this. You're using any and all means available to the agency to gain operation control of that border. Tell me about these islands and what migrants are doing.
You are exactly right. Good morning. It's great to be on with you. I am so excited today to be announcing that we are going to be able to give access to the Texas Department of Public Safety and our Texas Rangers to these islands that, you know, one of the things the General Land Office does that most people don't know is we determine the center of a waterway, which in this case is the actual border. And so we've been able to determine these islands belong to Texas. We are going to give law enforcement every opportunity to patrol them. We're going to get rid of the Carrizo cane, which is a very thick cane. Even if you're standing 5 feet from me in that cane, an infrared camera couldn't pick you up. So this is going to really help in our fight against the border.
So Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz tweeted yesterday that in just 48 hours, agents made over 10,000 illegal migrant apprehensions. They seized 52 pounds of fentanyl. I mean, look, the drug cartels are in charge here, and they are deciding who comes into America and who and at what price. But I'm interested in these islands in terms of the migrants. What are they doing? Hiding out there until they're ready to come in? Tell me what goes on those islands.
You know, these islands, when you get on them, I'm anticipating we're going to find all kinds of trash and wristbands and clothes and staging utensils. They basically hide out, and when the time's right, they make their final stretch. So we're going to take that away from their ability to access our state. You know, the General Land Office actually stewards millions of acres within 20 miles of the border, and so we're seeing a big uptake in our crossings. And it is amazing to me that we have, through Operation Lone Star, we've acquired or gotten more than enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in this country. And with this tragedy and the opioid overdoses, I just can't imagine that the Biden administration isn't paying attention and isn't taking thoughtful action to prevent these deaths.
Well, the president of Mexico wrote to Xi Jinping asking him for help controlling the shipments of fentanyl. He also slammed the United States in the letter, claiming that it's the U.S. unjustly blaming Mexico and the cartels for the crisis. Whose fault is it? Is it China pushing the fentanyl underpinnings, the chemicals that make fentanyl, into Mexico to make the drugs, or is it the Mexican cartels, or are they working together?
I think they're working together. It's a win-win for each of them. China is trying to destabilize our country with these drugs. Mexico is a cartel nation. You know, it takes two to secure a border, but the bottom line is until the Biden administration steps up and actually enforces our federal laws, this is going to continue.
Yeah.
You know, we have been dedicated in Texas to filling in where the federal government is not doing its job, and we're going to continue to fight every step of the way.
Cheryl.
Dr. Buckingham, as Texas Land Commissioner, the land as the ranchers, that's what I'm thinking about right now, those desperate ranchers, that they've had their land overrun by these migrants. There's been some altercations involving gunfire, unfortunately. I applaud you on the islands, but obviously this flow of migrants cannot be stopped at this point. What about the private ranchers that are along the border right now? What can you do for them? What is in your power? How can you help them?
Well, we've been dedicating billions of dollars to border security for our local and state police, and actually local military or state military to be able to step in. But you are exactly right. The ones that are hardest hit by this right out of the gate are our ranchers. These migrants coming across, they cut the fences, which then, of course, the cattle are getting out onto the interstate, which is a huge liability. Hitting a big cow on the going 80 miles an hour creates a really big problem. They turn off all the water to the troughs for the cows, so the livestock are dying across the way. I've had many ranchers, and actually some of our agricultural leases.
That's crazy.
Have had to remove all of their cattle because between turning off the water and the fences being cut, they just can't keep control of their cows, and it's unsafe for everybody. It is directly impactful to our folks who are struggling hard to be sure that we keep that food, fuel, and fiber going to the markets as needed.
Cheryl, it's such an important point that you raise. When I went to the border, one of the trips, I met with a number of ranchers. We were showing pictures there, and this rancher...
This lady looks a little tired.
He told me he will not even go out to throw the garbage out without carrying his pistol, that they have to carry a gun. Their property is getting trashed every day. Is there nothing more to be done right at the border so that people's personal property is not affected, as Cheryl raises?
You know, the best thing we can do is apprehend them as they come across, which we are trying to do. We're trying to enact new laws that give us the ability to apprehend them. But you're right, it is a tremendous problem. And we're seeing hundreds of thousands of people a month come across our border. It is completely overwhelming all of our communities, their medical resources, the schools, and of course law enforcement that's trying to do the right thing.
Well, we're going to watch your leadership on the issue. Dawn Buckingham, great to see you. Thanks very much for you taking all that you can in terms of pushing back on this incredible story. Thank you so much, Dawn.
I knew we were having problems at the border. I didn't realize that they were causing cattle to come out onto the freeway. I couldn't imagine smoking a cow at 70 or 80 miles an hour. They said 80, so I guess the freeways down there are a little bit faster than they are up here. I worry about hitting deer. Up here in Michigan, we see deer all the time. Big old bucks come running across the road. Smoke one of those at 70, it'd be the last thing you ever hit. Couldn't imagine hitting a cow. It's not like the cow's gonna just run out of the way, like hitting a brick wall and then cutting off the water and stuff. I don't know. Sounds like a nuisance. Thank you so much, Maybe Sunshine, for gifting 10 memberships over on YouTube. You're awesome. Thank you. All right, let's see what we got next. This next video is titled, Is Walmart Replacing Workers with Robots? I swear, Walmart's just a testing facility. You got so many people going in and out of there. Now everybody does self-checkout. There's almost no employees. The only employees I see are like 18-year-old shelf stockers. They're sitting there with their buddies talking crap and scratching their booties. That's pretty much all they're doing, yelling at each other, talking about TikTok. But the rest of the time, you're being watched by those cameras. You're being watched by loss prevention. They're tracking you. They're tracking your movements, how you scan your stuff, whether or not you scan everything. Now they're going to replace their employees with robots. Come on, man. All right, hooligans, let's get it started.
All right, just after 9:30 Eastern Time, a live look right now, New York City here out in Times Square. Going to be a warm one, by the way. Something we're bracing for here in the city. But is it going to warm up there as far as the markets go? We'll continue to follow that. But the big news for today is the world's largest brick and mortar retailer, Emma.
Yes, Walmart says it's going to significantly ramp up the use of robots in stores and warehouses, expected to boost sales by $130 billion over the next 5 years. Dan Geltrud is an accounting professor at Montclair State University. Brandon Arnold is executive vice president of the National Taxpayers Union. Gentlemen, welcome. Dan, let me start with you. Is this the future of retail? Robots?
Absolutely. It's the future of everything. Look, everyone has been talking about artificial intelligence in all aspects of our lives, particularly as it pertains to how businesses are going to evolve. So I think Walmart now focusing in on this, and they have the resources to do this, is to take a huge step in that direction. We have seen other major companies, not quite the size of Walmart, Bed Bath & Beyond being one of them, that really got behind the trend of where technology was going in that particular case with online retail. I don't see that for Walmart here. I think they recognize this is the future, and it's not following the trend, but leading the trend.
Interesting to see, to point out again, what the pictures we're showing are actual robots at Walmart. This would be a custodial robot, if you will, going around cleaning. So perhaps this is a job.
We have that at the Lexington Walmart. I just stand in the way. If it runs me over, I'm suing. I need the money.
Our $109 billion budget yielded
we'll continue to follow that. But however, again, what you're seeing here, people may lose some of their jobs, too. Is that a concern, Brandon?
They were having audio issues. That wasn't on my end.
By some of the policies that we've seen coming from the left. When you see a push for a higher minimum wage, when you see a push for a 32-hour work week or a 4-day work week, which is certainly in effect, we're seeing that push here in my home state of Maryland. There have been bills in Congress to do just that. What you're doing is accelerating this transition from a human workforce to one of automation. So that is pushing the trend, which would exist anyway, but is accelerating the trend that we're seeing. And we're going to see lower wage jobs start to disappear even more than they already have. And what we need to do is make sure that we have adequate training to make sure that these people that are currently in lower wage jobs can move up to middle wage jobs and improve their standard of living. So there's not necessarily a horror story here, but we need to be prepared for this transition, and we shouldn't force it along even faster with bad labor policies.
Well, Brandon, you almost brought in an element of politics, right? We've heard of this press for a national minimum wage and increase to it. And John, that makes me wonder, what's the status of that campaign, and could we see that set within the coming years or so?
Look, the minimum wage right now in many states is $15 an hour. A lot of people are pressuring.
It's not $15 an hour here.
I think it would be a lot better to recognize there are a lot of people in this country on the margins. There are people who might have some learning disabilities. There are people who might have some physical disabilities. Rather than have them sit home and collect disability checks, many of them would be happy if they were able to go out and do something, but they might not be worth $15 or $20 an hour. So I think that this acceleration to robots, yes, I agree with...
Could he just say that people with mental disabilities or physical disabilities are not worth $15 an hour?
Of work and for the opportunity to contribute to society, because they aren't worth the minimum wage, they're being sidelined.
All right, Dan Geltrude, Brandon Arnold joining us live again for our Wall Street segment. We do appreciate that. John, stick around.
Thank you, gentlemen. All
What a crazy person. I can't believe he just said that. I mean, I don't necessarily think that 18-year-olds should be getting $15 an hour just to wash dishes at McDonald's or at Subway or whatever. I mean, those no-skill jobs, that's why you get paid that little bit. But like when I worked at the factory where we made car parts and people would die on the floor and stuff like that, if you made one wrong move, that machine would crush you. Or maybe it'd stamp your hand and break all the bones in your hand. Maybe it'd paralyze you. We were making $15 an hour, and you had to be there for a whole year to go from $10 to $15 an hour. Now people are getting hired at McDonald's with $15 an hour to flip a cheeseburger just to screw your order up. And that stuff doesn't go uphill. It's not like McDonald's employees now make $15 an hour. If you work in a factory, you get $25. It's now everybody's making $15 an hour. And that's why skilled jobs are having trouble finding workers, because you got to work harder and work in a dangerous environment, but you make it just as much as people at Subway. So, I don't know. This stuff is messing our economy up big time. We need the Orange Eagle back. So this next video is titled, "Is China Trying to Replace the Dollar with Yuan?" As I stated earlier, it is difficult to find videos talking about countries that are abandoning the US dollar. They're attempting to. I don't think they're going to be able to, but they're attempting to. They're trying to dethrone the US dollar as the world's currency. Nobody wants to talk about this for some reason. I'm seeing a lot of articles on it, but this was the most recent video I could find on it. Let me see. And it's 4 days old. I couldn't find anything from today or, within the last 4 days. This was all I could find. Make sure you guys rack up them likes. Let's get these chats filled back up.
Welcome to the show, former Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz and Forbes Media Chair and Editor-in-Chief Steve Forbes. Okay, first to you, Steve. The president not commenting. He's now on a tour of 20 states talking jobs. More and more polls show the Biden White House is failing with voters. Voters don't like what he's doing. The majorities don't like it. They're majority worried about inflation. The majority say he's dishonest. Steve, are they ready for this? China is now trying to replace the U.S. dollar with their currency in global trade. What do you think of that story, Steve?
Well, China's several years has made very clear, along with the Russians, they want to downgrade the dollar because they think that'll enhance their power around the world. And certainly the way we've treated the dollar over the year has gone in that direction. However, people are not going to trust the Chinese yuan. You may get these one-off deals like they're doing with the French, but China does not have real capital markets. China has capital controls. And so in terms of currency, people are going to prefer the dollar to the yuan. And so in that sense, I think we've got some time to get our house in order. And that 20-state tour you're talking about with Joe Biden, that shows how utterly out of touch he and his team are in terms of the economy, proclaiming that even though people are feeling that things are not going well, they say things are just fine, shows how utterly out of touch they are with reality. Talk about the ultimate bubble. That tour is it.
Yeah, so what Steve just said, Jason, just factually, talking to economists on Wall Street and in Washington, when they keep saying that they don't want to be named in the quote, but they keep saying this might be one of the worst presidencies we've seen in the modern era. This is one of the worst White Houses they've ever had to deal with. They collapsed the border, record inflation, 14% all in under this White House, and just, more problems for the American people than they expected, Jason.
Yeah, the problem, though, is they think they're doing a great job. And after the 2022 election, Joe Biden said he was not going to change his trajectory in what he's doing. But I think the world, and certainly the United States, sees this projection of weakness. And that's why China's on the move. That's why Russia does not feel any pain for the United States. They just took a Wall Street Journal reporter. You got Iran that's developing a nuclear weapon. You have Saudi Arabia forming deals with Iran. I mean, there is nothing that the president can point to that is actually going well. The border's going the wrong direction. Prices are up, and he's such a poor communicator. I mean, that's the thing. He may go on a tour. The answer to our problems is not more cowbell and more Joe Biden. That exacerbates the problem.
Yeah, to what Jason just said, Steve, the U.S. can borrow more cheaply, and we've talked about this, at lower rates than it would otherwise because of the strength of the almighty dollar. It is the world's reserve currency, but we're seeing China doing deals in Yuan with the Middle East, with Africa, with France's total.
Oh, I guess it's Yuan. I didn't know that's how it's pronounced.
Since the Obama White House, we've added $20 trillion to the U.S. debt. It used to be $10 trillion. The president just wanted to add another nearly $7 trillion. They can only do that because of the strength of the dollar. But Steve, they're undercutting U.S. defense and they're undercutting U.S. energy. That is what supports the strength of the U.S. dollar.
Yes, the dollar reflects the strength of the American economy, and they're doing everything they can to undermine that economy, doing the exact opposite of what happened in the 1980s under Ronald Reagan. We had a terrible decade in the 70s. Defense was run down. The Soviet Union, amazingly, was seen as the rising power. And then Reagan came in and turned things around. People put Reagan in because they realized the U.S. was in deep trouble. People today recognizing more and more we're in deep trouble. They're very, very anxious about what's happening around the world. The seizure of that journalist is one example, but also China's now trying to secure the South China Sea, which is an international waterway. And so everything this country is doing is just feeding what our adversaries think is a declining power. And yes, we did respond to Ukraine, but we're not supplying enough weaponry so they can throw out the Russian invaders. So Putin is getting a second chance there. And the Chinese look at that and say the U.S. does not have the staying power that it had after World War II. And that's a very dangerous situation because I think ultimately after 2024, when we get a new regime, and we will, the United States is going to be coming back. And that's where miscalculations can come. They don't realize how this country can rebound as we've done before, and I think we're going to do it again.
Jason, to what Steve just said, the polls show it. Voters do not like this presidency. They keep saying America deserves better. What this far left power structure in Washington has done is basically destroyed and undercut the U.S. right now on the world stage. Where do we go from here, Jason? This is a failed presidency.
Well, I think the country needs to come to grips that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is taking over. This is no longer your parents' Democratic Party. I don't think there's a room for an actual true liberal.
Why do they use that phrase? This isn't your parents' blah, 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 blah. Both sides say it, red team and blue team.
That's the problem for the Democrats.
Jason Chaffetz, Steve Forbes, thanks for joining us tonight. You guys have a good weekend. It's good to see you.
We'll see. We'll see. They've always talked about how we've printed too much money. It doesn't represent gold anymore and all that stuff. But it's been kind of this, conspiracy kind of thing. You never hear about it in the mainstream news. So for them to actually talk about other countries not using our currency, maybe it's becoming more and more to the surface. So this next video is titled, Doocy asks KJP, point blank, why did old man Walter make untrue claim about Chinese spy balloon? Again, the only reason we're covering this is because we weren't live yesterday. So I missed the press briefing. I thought this was interesting, and it's Peter. So we'll see what Peter said yesterday.
On the Taiwan. On the Taiwan president visit, if China tries to take over Taiwan, is President Biden still committed to putting U.S. boots on the ground in Taiwan?
We've answered this question multiple times. I don't have anything else to share.
Okay. And then on the China spycraft, why did President Biden say about the China spycraft in February, we were able to protect sensitive sites against collection, if that's not true?
I'm not going to go into or dive into any reporting. That's not something I'm going to do. I'm not going to confirm any reporting. Look, we knew the flight.
Not reporting. The DNI said today that the U.S. does not appear to have provided critical new insights to the People's Republic of China. So is it they didn't provide any new critical insights, or they didn't get anything?
I would refer you to the ODNI if you have specific questions on their reporting. What I can tell you from here, and what we have said many times, is that we knew the flight path of the balloon before it crossed the United States. We took precautions in advance to ensure that it didn't get sensitive information. And when it comes to technology like this balloon, it has limited additive value compared to other means of intelligent collection. And we have said that. And the bottom line is, this is the administration that identified the problem and took action.
Okay, JP. She's terrible at her job, but now we know she's a drunk. It makes it even better. When I found the article talking about her getting that DUI, they mentioned that she was drunk at the press briefing and then left there to go to some sort of get-together that was at the White House, where she became even more intoxicated and then got busted on the way home, drunk driving. She don't want to talk about that, though. She don't want to talk about anything today. She like Kirby Suckface. Just flap his lips for an hour and a half. So this next video is titled, Democrat Lawmaker Reveals Why She's Leaving the Blue Party. Swapping teams. I wonder if they'll say, this isn't your parents' blue team anymore, blah, blah, blah. That's what Old Man Walter sounds like in my head. Come on, man. All right, hooligans, let's get her started.
Progressives, in fact, have had a good run of the table right now, not only in the Chicago's mayor's race, but it happened in Wisconsin for the state Supreme Court. I could see it filled by a Democrat. Progressive won at that, meanwhile tipping that Supreme Court in favor of Democrats. Very powerful Supreme Court in the state of Wisconsin, but it's not a complete run of the table for progressives right now. In fact, in North Carolina, there's a story of a Democratic representative who wants to become a Republican. That Representative Tricia Coughlin joins us right now, the North Carolina state representative, who is switching formally from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. Representative, good to have you. Why are you doing this?
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on your show. This is something I've really thought long and hard about since I've entered this chamber in January. I had served previously for 10 years and then took a break and came back with the intent, as always, to be a public servant, to really be a stateswoman, do greater good for all of the great state of North Carolina. I noticed some pretty big changes in the Democratic Party right when I got here, and it was very disturbing. I caught a lot of flack over the fact that on my car and on various things I display the American flag, that I talk a lot about my importance and belief in my faith, and I've used Jesus several times when I've led our chamber in house prayer. I was told you can never trust a dim who wears camo, and just this week called an ammo-sexual. I do support gun rights. That might seem minor, but that is very much absolutely out of everything our country stands for and what I believe. And I came here to be that leader. I have a strong record of working with Republicans since I started. That is extremely important to me. Instead, I saw the Democratic Party just want to make excuses to focus on very small matters.
I'm sorry, Representative, we're very tight for time here. We're very tight for time. I apologize for that. I did want to get a sense of the reaction you got from your old Democratic friends, what they made of your move.
Well, I mean, last week they called for my resignation or for a primary challenge and have paid thousands of dollars of false ads attacking me and my family. So they're getting what they want and what they deserve, and I think will start a trend throughout our country because people have had enough, and the partisanship of destroying personal lives, and going after my 2 children. I'm a single mom, so it was an easy decision.
So very quickly, were there any who said, Representative, I want to join you? I'm just too afraid of what the reaction will be from my Democratic colleagues.
I've heard that over the past few months, for sure. It takes a lot to do this. I'm a doer. I'm a risk taker. I do what I think is right, even if I am the only one doing it. That is who I am and what I believe. Certainly willing to talk to others and see if they're interested.
All right, we're watching closely. You caused quite a ruckus there doing this. Tricia Coughlin, who is now a Republican representative in North Carolina. It happens now and then. I'll do it here. The 5 is now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
You know it's bad when they're swapping teams. You'll never see red team start going blue team. You see it the other way around every now and then, though. Let's see. So this next one's the last one for YouTube, and then we got 2 more videos for the non-YouTube platforms because they do not go in line with the community guidelines over on YouTube, so I can't show them over there. I will post links and everything so you guys can make your way over to the other platforms to watch the rest of the live. But this next one we're going to show is it was the live pension protest in Paris. I don't know if it's still live, but we're going to check it out. We're going to skim through it so we can get up to date with what's going on over there. Yeah, it's not live anymore. They were live for 5.5 hours. So we're going to skim through it really quick and get up to date with what's going on over in Paris, France. And then we'll be wrapping things up over here on YouTube, and we'll continue on with the other platforms. I'll post links and stuff, that way you guys can make your way over to watch the rest of the live. All the orange is. Oh, things start getting spicy. Say Rumble needs to work on some things. I wish the chat was live. There is a live chat on Rumble. You have to be on a browser in order to see it, though. You can't see it from the app. You have to either be on a computer or be on a browser on your phone, like Google Chrome or Safari or Mozilla or whatever browser you have on your phone. But if you use the app, as far as I know, you can't see the chat. Red Kings. This was live earlier. It ended an hour or 2 ago. Weird, it went from being spicy to not spicy. I'm just kind of skipping through the live here to see how it progressed. Ton of people out there. This guy over on the other side there with the red umbrella, I think he's selling hot dogs. That'd be the way to go. Hot dogs and riot pizza. Probably make a ton of money out there. They must be throwing smoke cans, because if that was CS gas, they wouldn't be just standing there like that. Plus, I don't really see people with gas masks on. Didn't get that spicy. It wasn't too spicy. Alright, let's see. Alright, hooligans, so we are at the part of the live where we have to shut YouTube off because the other two videos that I have are not in line with the community guidelines over on YouTube, so I'm not allowed to show that stuff there. It's an MTG video talking about her experience being in New York the other day when the Orange Eagle was there. And then we have the Orange Eagle's lawyer talking about Bragg and how he's going to go down as a disgrace. I'm going to post the links to Rumble, Odyssey, JeffMacLive.com, and the link tree so you can go check out all the live streaming platforms that we have. YouTube's the only community guidelines that I can't show these videos on, but we're still going to be live on Twitch, Kick, Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey, JeffMacLive.com, and all that stuff. So you'll have the link tree to check them all out if you want to bounce from platform to platform. So give me a second to drop these links really quick, and then I'll give you the spiel deal. You'll have till the end of the advertisement to make your way over to the free speech platforms. Awesome. I appreciate you, Marcia. Wow, you guys haven't been hearing me this whole time. That's so crazy. That's what I get for not using the button. Either way, go to JeffMacLive.com. Scroll down the page. Click on all the links. Follow all the stuff. Join Gilded. Join JeffMacLive.com. Look forward to voice chats on the website every weekend. That's been my goal. Every weekend we're going to do voice chats where we get to hang out and all that. So definitely join the website. If you don't want to pay for the membership up front, you can get the free week membership, no strings attached, no credit cards or anything like that. You just fill out the information so you can have your profile. You'll be all set. If you really like it, come back, pay for a membership subscription, and be a part of all the cool people over there. All right, everyone. We're going to wrap this up on the YouTube side. We're going to cover everything on all the non-YouTube platforms. So hopefully you've made your way there. For everybody that watches on YouTube and you won't go to any other platform for whatever reason that is, I really appreciate you guys. I wish I could show this content to you, but I have to follow the community guidelines. So I'll see you on the next live. All right. Do. Where are we at here? I can't believe I just did that whole spiel deal and nobody could even hear me. That's what I get. That's what I get.